37th parallel on America's haunted highway. It's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to episode 6 of season 2 of Pixelated Paranormal. I'm your host, Sean, and with me tonight are Preston and Rob. Boys, how are you doing?
All right.
Good. Just remember, folks, this is the season that keeps on giving.
It's a season that keeps on giving. We're going to go 10 episodes this season instead of 6, so brace yourselves and consider it your lucky day. I think we're going to skip most of the pleasantries and just jump straight into the news and just get her going right out of the gate here. So, Rob, why don't you start things off?
So, I guess last year there was lots of mudslides and flooding in Iceland, and a lot of people are blaming it on elves. And when we say elves, we're not talking about the pointy-eared elves that you'd see in D&D or even Santa Claus's elves. These are the Icelandic elves. They look a lot like people, royalty, like real human people. But apparently they have been blamed for these mudslides and stuff. They were doing some construction in a mountain town, and they were clearing roadways, and they found themselves dodging mudslides and contending with a flooded river. A reporter had even came out there and had gotten stuck in the mud and had to dig him out. So he was sinking in the mud. And people are trying to blame elves for it because they apparently, while they were doing construction, they threw a bunch of dust and mud and dirt all over a special stone. And this stone is so special that it actually has a name. And I'm trying to find what that name was because it was something unpronounceable to me. Nearly, so I had to, say it because
the Blarney Stone.
Yeah, it's in Icelandic folklore. It's called the Alfkenústein. The
Elfstone.
And it has a backstory that involves a human, a fairy, and an enchanted elf cloth. And if you want to look that up, you can, because I'm not going to go over that. But apparently, they threw a bunch of mud on it, and soon afterwards, that's when all the catastrophes with mudslides and flooding rivers happened. So they actually dug the stone back up. They power washed it down and put it in a special place so that hopefully that would calm the elves. And there's all kinds of Icelandic names here, like Miss Sigmundóttir. And he said much of lore around elves has to do with explaining tough living conditions. Modern scholars believe that this was one way the Icelandics tried to control their destinies in a hand and climate that was incredibly harsh and unforgiving. So they think so. And I love the little picture here. I wish you guys could see this, but it just looks like a rock and somebody put googly eyes on it. So that's really cute. But yeah, That's the rock. That's the rock that got buried. Somebody put googly eyes on it. I think it's just a fake picture to show that it was an important stone. So,
that's funny.
So good luck. Hopefully, they power wash the stone and the elves will leave people alone and let them go about their business. But in a way, that's kind of a mass hysteria a bit too, because everybody's like trying to figure out reasons why this happened, and they start blaming elves. And it's probably lucky it didn't become a full blown, "Oh my God, the elves tried to kill my dog," or.
Right. That's funny. Well, I don't know. It's interesting because everywhere you go, especially like in Europe, there's so many tales and urban myths about, goblins and gremlins and elves and shoe elves and everything else, pixies and fairies and everything else. So I think it's kind of cool to me that they're still believing in that kind of thing in modern day. In the U.S., we don't really blame a lot of stuff on pixies and elves anymore, but I've always liked that.
Well, I mean, a lot of people say it's because America doesn't really have any kind of culture that goes back that far. We do have, the Native Americans do believe in all those spirits and stuff. So, there's that.
Yeah, that's very true. So also in the news, and I'm pretty sure everybody's as tired of it as we are clowns. And I think we may just make this the last time we ever talk about clowns unless it becomes more interesting.
Unless something Yeah. So there's just been clown sightings everywhere now. It suddenly has exploded. And I laughed because I was playing Xbox with Steven the other night, and it was really funny because he's going off about the whole clown situation. And he goes, and it was Pixelated Paranormal that first broke the story. They were first feet on the ground in this Bigfoot or this clown story, and I laughed at that because we really were talking about it after everything that started. Well, hell, the very first episode of the show was the reason why I talked about making the show is because some of my friends in high and junior high were trying to find a clown that was told to be luring kids into a van and everything. So, I mean, this story affects me in such a way as well, but. So yeah, they're just everywhere now. They've arrested one guy who was dressed up as a black clown, like in black makeup and black clothing and stuff like that. So there is, honest to gosh, people in outfits, but the media is really going to cause somebody to get hurt.
Yeah, that's the problem of it all. I mean, people are threatening, like I read that story last time about the girl saying if anybody shows up, then the police are going to be called on her because she's going to have killed somebody.
Well, in Chicago, that actually happened. These two guys dressed up as clowns, and they were in a parking garage, and they snuck up on a group of like 10 high schoolers, and the high schoolers gave them the beatdown, kicked their asses, sat on top of them after their asses were kicked, and waited for the cops to show up. So, violence against clowns has happened.
Oh man, right? And that's the problem we're going to have is that. What's going to happen is people are going to get hurt on accident. I always like the stories, you'd see every once in a blue moon of, we were driving on a gravel road in Florida and saw this creepy clown with some balloons, and he's just pointing down a gravel driveway telling us to go that way. That I liked. I always thought that was a nice little creepy thing, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. Luring kids out into the woods, that is not something you do. That is a good way to get shot.
So far, there's been a couple fake stories of people getting shot and killed. There was I think in Indiana, there was a news story that ended up...
Fort Wayne.
Yeah, ended up being fake. That a SUV pulled up and a guy just headshotted some clown walking down the street.
Well,
so
here in our town, we have a police scanner kind of program on not a program, but a web page on
Facebook page.
Yeah, and they basically read scanner places. It's called Henderson Watch and Evansville Watch. We've had a lot of clown sightings in the area, but the one that made it the most unnerving is that apparently one night a man told a woman to get in the house because they had seen clowns at Carriage Mobile Homes. By the way, that's where I grew up when I was searching for the clown back in 8th grade. That's where I lived. So I was like, "Oh God, guys, they found me. They're trying to hunt me down." But he told that woman to go back inside and take her kids and put them back up. But he said he had a gun and he was going to go clown hunting. And then like a couple nights ago, again, Carriage Mobile Home had other reports that they were trying to lure kids into the woods, which sounds just maybe it was made up. But there are woods that are like a bit away from Carriage Mobile Home. That there's an old barn that used to sit there. It may still be there. And I know before there's been people that reported that homeless people did live back up that way. I never seen them, but like one of my friends was walking that way and ran into a homeless man who was just sleeping up there, and he scared the man, and the man yelled at him and he took off. So, I mean, I don't know, but I mean we're hearing these stories everywhere. So,
yeah, and that's the problem too. Is at first it starts off pretty creepy, and then everybody and their cousin just jumps in. Well, shit, I want to be a clown. I'm going to jump in on this, man. I want to be a part of something like a viral, prank. And so you got all these kids dressing up as clowns, walking around trying to creep out people, and then you've got the fakers, the guys who are making the fake videos. Oh shit, you see that clown? What you doing? Drive, man, drive! Oh shit, he's got a knife. And all these college kids and stuff, and it's just become more ridiculous than anything else. And like we said before, it's going to result in somebody getting hurt or probably killed, or worse yet, what happens when that one guy, there's that one guy or that one group of people who are waiting for something like this, who are unstable or have mental illness, thinking that all they need is that one sign to let loose carnage, and then they dress up as a clown and do kill somebody because they think, oh, this is it, I am the chaos, and then goes out and starts, committing some kind of deplorable crime.
Can you say that again? I am the chaos.
But what's kind of sad among all of this is the fact that, what about... I just tried to use my mouse on my my iPad. That was ridiculous. What about what is this doing to actual clowns? And I'm being kind of serious here because on rawstory.com, there's a news article that says, and guys, we're not making fun of other matters in the news, but Clown Lives Matter March is scheduled in in Tucson after nationwide creepy clown attacks and sightings. It says, posted with permission from the International Business Times. Following multiple creepy clown sightings across the nation, organizers in Tucson, Arizona are planning a Clown Lives Matter March. The event gives attendees the opportunity to dress up as clowns and wear makeup and masks in order to show that not all clowns are violent. And it says more than 100 clowns are expected to show up at the gathering. A flyer for the march read this: "This is a peaceful way to show that clowns are not psycho killers and want the public to feel safe."
So, in other words, instead of the gathering of the juggalos, it's the gathering of the jugglers.
Oh, God. I love you. I love you more than I should. International Business Times spoke this week with Minnesota clown Trisha Manuel, who explained that the recent reports are threatening the livelihoods of people who have just made careers out of being clowns. She says it's heartbreaking. We're very concerned. Most people get into clowning because they love to make people laugh. They love kids. This is ruining it. This is going to change what we do and what we are able to do. It's going to affect our livelihoods, which, I mean, that's kind of true. Yeah. I think it's definitely going to have a negative effect on those kind of things, but if anybody's interested...
It's going to affect Halloween this year.
God, man, that's going to be the number one freaking costume. And I think, we haven't seen any really true violent crimes against these clowns, but I think this Halloween, I think it might be a tipping point where we're going to hear about some honest-to-goodness news articles, so... But if anybody's interested, the Arizona Clown Lives Matter March is scheduled to take place October 15th at 6:30 p.m. So be there.
And we actually had the clown epidemic hit our area, Sean. The May school system and one of the Wichita school systems had high schoolers calling in saying that they were clowns that were going to chop people up and kill preps and things like that. And so the police had to go in and investigate that and arrest some kids. So
yeah, it's dumb. And like we talked about before, it's just mass hysteria is all it is. Because I think how many people are going to look outside and see a bag blow across their yard or a shadow and think, oh, it's a clown. They're here. They're going to get me. Yeah, but
do you want a balloon? Beep beep, Richie.
Do you want a balloon? We all float down here, Georgie. So that's going to be our topic for the show tonight, guys, is mass hysteria. And who wants to go first? Who wants to jump in? What we're going to do is just kind of go over a lot of classic cases of mass hysteria, basically where one person reports one thing, i.e. clowns, and next thing you know, it just spreads like a wildfire, and most of it's fake, most of it's made up. So who wants to go first? Preston, why don't you knock out...
The dumbest story I've ever heard of anything is what Preston's going to talk about today.
Until it happens to you, Rob. Until it happens to you.
One day we're going to get a phone call from Rob, and it's going to be like, guys, my penis is shrinking, and I don't know what to do.
How you would know
Robert,
the difference.
Man. So, yeah, jump into it, Preston. Jump into it.
So we're going to talk about the great Singapore penis epidemic in the 60s. And this happened around 1967. Basically, a total of 554 men ended up going to the hospital reporting that they believed that their penis was shrinking.
It was cold outside.
Nobody knows exactly...
It was cold outside.
What's that now? It was cold outside. Well, nobody knows exactly how it started or what caused, how the first reports caused people to start catching this on, but then they just started seeing this flood of men coming into the hospitals who's saying that their penises were shrinking. Now, it is actually called, and I'm going to pull it up here because it has an actual name.
Honey, I Shrunk Your Dick.
Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk Your Dick. It's called Coro, and it is actually derived from the term kura, which means head of turtle. And
I swear I'm an adult, guys, but that even made me laugh.
Oh, that's great.
So many men's turtle heads weren't poking out that doctors didn't know what to do. And they would sit there and try to convince these guys, listen, there's a group of people in this hospital. We're looking at your dick. We can see it. Your dick is not shrinking. And so they would end up just sending the people home. And they got so freaked out and paranoid that the patients suffering from it would use rubber bands, chopsticks, clamps, clothespins, and anything else they could to secure their penis in place, causing more damage. The youngest victims were no younger than 20 and ranged all the way to 40, and 98% had Chinese ancestry. Now, this is important because in 1984, there was a Chinese penis panic, and it lasted all the way till 85, and there were 3,000 individuals treated for the Koro epidemic. And this time that they would, as they were pulling their penis out, they would eat red pepper, black pepper, pepper jam, or ginger juice as a natural tonic to stop their penis from shrinking. Now, the Orient isn't the only place that suffered from penis epidemic. Africa has suffered from it as well, but instead of their penises just shrinking, the epidemic involved witch doctors actually stealing penises, and there was a report of a female witch doctor who in fact got caught at an airport with penises, like shriveled up penises hidden in baguettes.
Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ching, chang, walla, ping, ping. And then he shrunk my dick.
Yep, pretty much. And it caught on, so there were, like, in some cases, there was a guy that was caught on a bus who felt a tingling sensation in his crotch, and he started screaming, saying, "My penis is disappearing, it's going away." And again, the doctors are like, "Dude, your dick's right there." And he's like, No, don't you see, it's shrinking, it's going bye-bye. In the Sudan, in 2003, it was the penis-melting Zionist robot combs, where men were going around asking other men to comb their hair, and when they would comb the hair, the comber would feel his penis disappear.
Huh, well.
That's it. That's all I got. But
Story.
here in the United
the 1500
States,
story. You said there was
huh?
That was the one I was most interested in because
in the
that seemed like
1500s.
an interesting time for that to happen.
Let's see. It took place in the 15th and 16th centuries. Men claimed that witches were stealing their penises and hoarding them in birds' nests. German clergyman Heinrich Kramer describes the epidemic in Malus Mackenkram in 1486, in which witches collected numerous male organs in great numbers, as many as 20 or 30 members together, and put them in birds' nests and shut them in a box.
All right.
Yep.
And here in the United
Oh, that's fantastic. So, do you got anything else?
Well, as far as penises goes, that's it. That's all about the penis talk we got. But
Okay, that's plenty.
I do have some other ones, like for example, in France. Let me scroll back up here to the top of this. It's called the Meowing Nuns.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, this took place in France during the Middle Ages. It doesn't give an exact date, but one nun began meowing like a cat, and then soon later, numerous nuns throughout the convent started meowing. It got so bad that the village had to call in soldiers who threatened to whip them if they didn't stop. Back then, it was considered common thought that some animals, especially cats, had the power to possess people. Hence, the hysteria caught on in the nunnery, causing them to meow consistently.
Nice.
1518 was the dancing plague in France. A woman named Mrs. Tafra was dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, and she began dancing for multiple days, and by the seventh day, 34 people had joined in. By the end of the month, 400 people were dancing straight. They never rested, and as many as 15 died per day due to heart attacks, strokes,
I've
or
heard about that
exhaustion.
one. That's just weird.
Huh.
Then there was the one that I sent you guys on the group chat earlier about the Pokemon epidemic that took place in Japan.
Yeah, what was that?
Basically, there was one of the episodes called Cyber Soldier Porygon. It took place in 1997. It affected 12,000 Japanese children who, after watching the Pokemon show, started seizuring. It was so bad that they decided to not air it in the United States, and they believed that this was a simple case of mass hysteria.
They did release the video online back in the day, though. I remember in '97 I had like the really slow dial-up internet, and I got to watch that scene, and I was like, I don't understand. I mean, it was kind of flashy, but I don't understand why it would cause it. But I don't know. There's a lot of weird history with Pokemon games and stuff about music that drove people crazy and stuff like that. So it's a weird Japanese thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's this weird one called the Tanganyika laughter epidemic of 1962, where one school-aged girl started laughing hysterically in class, soon spread to over 159 students, and then spread throughout the village. A total of 217 people laughed for over a month straight. And there was one called the writing tremor epidemic. Took place in... I don't know where the hell this is. It doesn't say. It just says Gross Tins, where a 10-year-old schoolgirl's hand started trembling in class, spread throughout her whole body, and by the end of the day, this took place in Switzerland. Over 20 kids in one day were affected by it. And then 27 years later, over 20 more students suffered from the same symptoms, most likely due to hearing stories from the first outbreak.
Very strange too. So lots of school kids, huh?
Yeah. Now, one thing about the penis epidemic is that was actually a book written by a psychologist, and what he said was that if you look at when most of these epidemics took place, is when there was some type of social change going on, or like in China, like you had the People's Republic of China that were changing, and that people tend, when they have to deal with stress, they tend to deal with it in weird ways, and so they focus all that negativity and all that stress onto these epidemics, and that's like their outlet, so that they don't have to feel the societal pressures. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. You look at the Asian cultures when they're dealing with stress and like cultural changes, it somehow turns into a penis epidemic, and then you look at the United States and we just have fucking clowns.
Not literally fucking clowns.
Not yet, anyway. There's actually a strip club, and it's called Jumbo's, and it has to do with women dressed up as clowns dancing the night away. So, is that all you got for? Is that all you got for your mass hysteria?
That's all I got.
So I'm gonna jump into probably the most classic case of mass hysteria, and that has to be the Salem witch trials. And I'm not going to bore people with that because we all pretty much studied it in school and know a lot about it. But that was one of your most classic examples of mass hysteria. Took place back in colonial Massachusetts. February of 1692 through May of 1693. And the facts I thought that were interesting about that is, not only in Salem but other, witch sightings back then. It was sad because one or two people could get together and say, oh yeah, so and so down the street, Susie down the street talks to the devil, and I saw her doing this. And next thing you know, Susie down the street's getting hung because three people didn't really like Susie down the street. But the core belief was that the devil would give certain people mystic powers if they would then basically surrender themselves to the devil. And what I thought was kind of cool about the Salem witch trials is we always hear the classic cases of, oh, she's a witch, burn her at the stake, and then, they'd get burned at the stake. But did you guys know that in the Salem witch trials, nobody ever actually got burned at the stake alive?
Huh.
Really?
Yep. What I could find is 20 people were executed, 14 of which were hung. One was then, I forget the name of the torture, but basically there was a farmer, a man, who was accused of being a witch, and they wanted him to confess. And he wouldn't confess because he wasn't guilty, so they applied a platform to his body and then started covering him with rocks and stones. And I think over the course of 2 days, they just kept adding stones and stones and stones until he finally died. But yeah, I thought that was really weird. And then 5 people died in prison, not hung, not burned, but just died in prison during their sentencing, 2 of which were babies.
That baby's a witch.
That baby's a witch. I didn't like the way he was looking at me.
He didn't cry right. Burn it. It's got the cry of Satan in it.
Something else I thought that was really funny that I have never heard of. I forget exactly who it was when I read it, but a woman had instructed one of her slaves, John Indian, to make a witch cake. Have you guys ever heard of a witch cake?
No. What's a witch cake?
Okay, so we know basically from Monty Python the best way to find out if a person's a witch is to float them in water.
Right.
And if they float, then they're a witch, and if they sink, they weren't. So
Whoopsie
the
daisies.
other whoopsie daisies. The other classic case is to make a witch cake. Witch cake is a cake that you make from rye meal and the urine from the person that you are claiming to be a witch.
Nice.
You would make the pee-pee cake, and then you would feed the cake to a dog. And if the girl or man that you thought was a witch cringed or screamed or twinged in pain while the dog was eating the cake, she was a witch. So it seems like a really unfair way to abuse animals, just to feed them piss cake. But a classic case of mass hysteria that I have just freaking fallen in love with is that of Spring Heel Jack. Do you guys know about Spring Heel Jack? Do you remember about him a little bit? So
He's a gas.
No.
He's a gas. No, I don't think anybody listens to that music but you, Preston. Spring Heel Jack was, and that's spring heeled like the back of your feet, not hill like something that you would climb on top of. Spring Heel Jack was part of English folklore in the Victorian era. And this was a creature that people had, kind of like your, what was his name, Jack the Ripper kind of thing. A lot of, supposed ghosts and serial killers were plaguing the streets of London and England. And Spring Heel Jack basically was a man, so to speak, a man creature who looked like a devil. He had pointed ears. Sometimes he wore a hood. He had a very big smile, eyes that looked like red fireballs and would glow like fire in the night. And what he was most noted for was the fact that he wore a cloak and he could breathe blue fire from his mouth. And what gave him the name Spring Heel Jack is that he could jump over 9-foot walls and on top of buildings with a single bound. And the earliest alleged sighting of Spring Heel Jack was from a woman named Mary Stevens. This was in October of 1837 in England. She was walking through Lavender Hill, where she was working as a servant. After visiting her parents in Battersea on the way through the Clapham Common, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. After immobilizing her with a tight grip of his arms, he began kissing her face, kissing her neck, and then ripped away her clothing, grabbing at her flesh with his claws, which were, according to her, cold and clammy like those of a corpse. In a panic, the girl screamed, making the attacker quick to flee. As he ran away, a police officer reported seeing him running down the street and with a single bound jumped over a stone wall and ran off into the night. And that basically, kind of like your mass hysteria of the clowns, made everybody panic, thinking that this Spring Heel Jack was going to be running through the streets trying to attack. And then everybody started seeing it. It says the next day, the leaping character is said to have chosen a very different victim near Mary Stevens' home, inaugurating a method that would reappear in later reports. He jumped in the way of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to lose control, crash, and severely injure himself. Several witnesses claimed that he had escaped by jumping over a 9-foot, that's 2.7 meter high wall, and babbling with a high-pitched ringing laughter. Gradually, the news of the strange character spread. Soon the press started putting him in all the Penny Dreadful... I guess those were newspapers, right? The Penny Dreadfuls were kind of like newspapers.
I think they were just like those 10-cent stories or whatever, just like the cheap knockoff, like cheap novels.
Oh, right. There you go. There is another story, kind of the most famous story that I thought was just kind of really bizarre, is amidst all these sightings, of course, the police are running around trying to find the character. People are, boarding up their windows and keeping all the women and children in after nightfall. The case is called the Alsop case. The Alsop case is one of the widespread stories about Jack the Ripper, not Jack the Ripper, Spring Heel Jack, being published in several notable newspapers and Penny Dreadfuls. The report the woman gave is that I answered the door of my father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer who told me to bring a light, claiming, "We have caught Spring Heel Jack here in the lane. Bring a candle." I brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment I handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented the most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue flames and white flames from his mouth, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Miss Alsop reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared to be tight-fitting, was that of oilskin. Without saying a word, he caught hold of her again, beginning to tear at her gown, exposing her skin with his claws, which she was certain were made of some kind of metallic substance. She screamed for help and managed to get away from him as she ran towards the house. He caught her on the steps and tore at her neck and her arms with his claws. She was rescued by one of her sisters, after which the assaulter fled. During the 1870s, stories began to arise quickly about Jack again, this time in Aldershot. And this report says that a sentry on duty at the North Camp peered into the darkness and the fog, and his attention was attracted to a peculiar figure advancing towards him. The soldier issued a challenge which went unheeded, and the figure came up beside him and delivered several slaps to his face. The guard shot at him with no visible effect. Some sources claim the soldier may have had fired blanks because he didn't have actual ammunition in the guns. Others say that he missed and fired warning shots. The strange figure then disappeared into the surrounding darkness with astonishing bounds. Other people claim that there were sightings of Spring Hill Jack all the way into World War II, claiming that he may have been some kind of a mortal or a vampire or just the devil himself. So
there was a story though that the Spring Hill Jack story stopped after a prostitute got accidentally killed.
Really?
Yeah, that was like one of the last attacks. He jumped to scare the woman and rip her clothes off. Well, she ended up falling off a bridge, I think, and died. And after that, the Spring Hill Jack stories had stopped. They think that maybe it was all a game, and then he accidentally killed somebody, and he felt a lot of regret for it and stopped doing it. But to him, originally, it was a game. It's just kind of funny. And, if you found a way to make springy shoes or whatever, like you jump really high, like moon boots or something, I mean, I could see you having a little fun. Probably not molesting women. That's pretty bad. But, I mean, just jumping out and scaring people or stuff like that could be fun for a while. Just like that guy that got their gorilla costume and swing across the roadways. Did you ever see that video? But
yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah, but that's pretty much one of the last stories they just told about Spring Hill Jack is that he killed somebody on accident. So,
well, I did read about, I don't know exactly what the incident was, so that's probably what it was, that in actuality Spring Hill Jack, because he was seen across such a wide area, was actually not a devil or a crypto, but instead it was a bunch of bored, well-to-do people, fraternities, playing a prank. And that just to get their jollies off, they would dress up, with the tin helmet and the cloak and the fake claws, and they would run through the town terrorizing like prostitutes and women just to get their jollies off. And then there was an incident that had occurred, and all of a sudden they had all stopped. But then it was interesting to see that, there were reports clear up into World War II. But, I mean, part of that also has to do with the idea of mass hysteria and, the telephone game. Some people used to call it the Chinese whisper, where I would say, "Hey, Rob, outside my house I saw a guy with breathing blue fire," and then you're like, "Hey, Preston, Sean saw a guy breathing blue fire, and he said his eyes were as red as coals," and the next thing you know, the story gets more and more deformed and torn apart. So it's pretty interesting. Do you guys have any other examples of mass hysteria?
The Mad Gassers in England that took place around the same time as Spring Hill Jack that would go around and gas everybody. They would use like laughing gas and.
Well, they don't know what he used. He was put in little tube. They said that basically a woman and a man started smelling something odd. They said it smelled like some kind of they said ether. They said like an ethery smell. And they found a tube that was sticking in the window, and when they looked out, they seen a man ran off, and so that was the Mad Gasser, and they never, according to what I've read or seen on Mysterious Universe, I think they talked about that story, and they said basically they don't think there was any validity to that was like a one-time off thing that did spread through mass hysteria, because people were worried, every time they smelled something odd that someone was trying to gas them, so. I think it was the Mad Gasser of Mattoon or something is what the name was.
It seems like a lot of that stuff happened in England.
I was thinking that was over here in the States, though, but I could be wrong.
Oh, really? It very well could have been. I know there was the Halifax Slasher, which took place in Halifax, England, but this was more recent. This was like 1936, and there was like a week-long epidemic of starting out with two women claiming that they were attacked by a mysterious man with like a hammer and bright buckles on his shoes. And then people said that he was running around with a knife and a razor and a hammer just attacking all these different people in Scotland Yard. And I think November 29th, they said that a man actually said that he was attacked by the slasher as well, but later on admitted that he did it just for attention because he just wanted to have people pay attention to him.
Yeah, the Mad Gasser was in the States.
I think that's really all I had. The Monkey Man of New Delhi. Apparently, there was a monkey man in New Delhi that a lot of people claim to have seen, and it's kind of like Spring Hill Jack in a way. It was a monkey man, half monkey, half man, that was about 4 foot tall, who wore a metal helmet and ran around New Delhi attacking people, biting them and scraping at them. He wore Band-Aids and a helmet, and he was covered in fur.
All right.
There you go. So
There you go.
I think with that, we're going to jump right into some urban legends. Preston found a really excellent. Was it Preston or Rob?
It was Rob.
One of you guys, the same person in my book, but whatever. With some, I guess, what would you say? Like the top 50 urban legends from around the states?
Yeah, I found the top 50 urban legends around each. It was basically the top 50 urban legends, one from each state is whatever it was. And so I was kind of looking through this list, and Sean's like, "We should do this," and I'm like, "Meh." But originally I was going to choose Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Kentucky because that's where my mom was from Illinois, or her family's from Illinois. But I'm going to cut out Illinois and just go with Tennessee because it's someplace that lives nearby, mainly because the Illinois one was a clown attack in Chicago, and I think we've talked enough about clowns. So I read that and I was like, no,
Nice.
I don't think I'm going to do that one.
Well, who wants to start her off? I think Preston should go last and
Yeah.
end with Kansas.
I'm not doing Kansas.
You're not doing the hamburger.
You're not doing
Man?
Kansız?
No, I said
Sweet,
No.
I'll jump on Kansas. I'll finish up Kansas.
I said I was doing Missouri, Oklahoma, and Nebraska.
Well, I'll go ahead and start because I got a really interesting
fair
one here
enough.
that I'm kind of been
Jump in.
chopping at the bit about because I hadn't heard this story and it was really interesting. And honestly, this sounds like it's more true than most urban legends. They're really stupid fake. But they talk about in Michigan the legends and disappearances of the Michigan Triangle. So in Lake Michigan, there's an area like the Bermuda Triangle where ships have disappeared, planes have actually disappeared. People have disappeared right out of boats. So the main story here is that Northwest Flight 2501, and back in 1950, there was a plane that Northwest Airlines was flying over Lake Michigan, carrying 58 people, and it disappeared off radar. So they couldn't find it. They checked Lake Michigan, and they found parts of the ship or parts of the plane floating in the water. However, even with radar and everything else, they never did find the plane. And Lake Michigan is not like the ocean; it's not that deep. I mean, it's deep. I'm sure it's deep, but I'm saying it's not ocean depths. And they said it was trying to fly from New York to Seattle on June 23rd, 1950, and it just disappeared, along with the 55 passengers and 3 crew members. It's the deadliest commercial airliner accident in American history at the time. So this is a pretty big story. They never could find the plane. No wreckage was ever recovered except for a few, scraps of metal or whatever. Yeah. So, and they said, subsequently, 2 mass graves were found. One in St. Joseph area and another in South Haven were discovered decades later. Unfortunately, the victims' families weren't notified of the burials. So, did somebody bury these bodies? Did the government bury the bodies? I don't know, but it just seems kind of weird. And another story they had from this area was the mysterious disappearance of Captain Donner. Apparently, he was on a ship in Lake Michigan. Now, Lake Michigan is 400 miles. It's a huge lake. It's a great lake.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that they hadn't heard from him in a while, and they were getting close to port, and so the guy, one of the crewmen, went to go find him, and they went to his cabin, and it was locked. And he's like, trying to get hold of his captain or whatever. And he's like, come in, he's like, come on, where you at, buddy? We need you out here. He ended up having to break in, and when he got in there, it was locked from the inside, and they could not find the captain anywhere. It's like he disappeared right out of the boat. And so, years later, in 2007, they discovered a 40-foot ring of rocks resting underneath Lake Michigan waters. Almost like a Stonehenge. So...
That's bizarre.
Yeah. So, and they said one of the stones rests outside the circle had what appeared to be a carving of a mastodon. So, and that thing hasn't been around since 10,000 years ago. So, is it some kind of ancient burial site maybe that was and after the Ice Age, maybe, water came in and from the glaciers and stuff, and when they retreated, it left all that area underwater. Is that maybe how the Great Lakes were formed? Maybe that was a burial site. And they said that discovery is quite accidental since the team was hired to map old boat wrecks with sonar, and then they found this ring of stones. So that's pretty cool, man. I had never heard that story before. So that's that.
Good God, man.
And then Bigfoot, the Crossley creature, which I hadn't heard this story either. It was another story from I believe it's Indiana, and it's just their story of a Bigfoot type creature they seen. It's not anything really special, but they reported it for years. Called it the Crossley creature of Jennings County, Indiana, and they basically said it was a 9-foot man with red eyes and such like that. But it's your typical Bigfoot story. But I had never heard of it, so I was kind of surprised that these urban legends in Indiana I've never heard of. The one in Kentucky, however, it's kind of weird because don't you guys have a crybaby bridge?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's Therosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, so. Apparently, there's a road called Sleepy Hollow here in Kentucky, and they have a bridge that apparently is the same story that they have in Kansas. So you see a lot of these urban legends that go from one place to another. So this almost sounds pretty much like y'all's story, where this is where they threw sickly babies off of a bridge to kill them when they were when they were sick babies and they wanted to get rid of the baby. They would throw it over this bridge, and you hear crying when you try to cross the bridge at night. But also, they said if you drive down this road at night, sometimes a black hearse, will start following you and try to run you off the road. So, yeah.
Jeepers creepers.
Jeepers creepers. How'd you get those eyes? But yeah, I kind of think when we come down here, man, we should go see if we can find that place and just take that road. You guys come down here.
Dude, we really ought to. We really ought to.
Take a rental car. I don't want to wreck my car though.
Wuss.
Take one for the team, Rob. Take one for the
and
team.
the last one I had was an urban legend from Tennessee called Skinned Tom, and this is one of those really odd ones that this is like they would probably make a horror movie off this and it'd be fucking god awful. Basically, the story is that Skinned Tom was having an affair with a man's wife out in Lover's Lane. The husband found out about it. He went out to Lover's Lane, and but instead of killing Skinned Tom, he skinned him alive, and he later died of being skinned alive. And the wife disappeared. But they say if you go up there on Lover's Lane on certain nights, you see a skeleton covered in blood. It looks like flesh rotted off almost, and he's carrying the knife that skinned him. So, pretty dumb story. Probably, definitely an urban legend. That's your typical urban legend. But, I don't believe that one for a minute. But, those are the ones I have. So.
Cool. You want to go next, Preston?
I can. So, let me start out with the lamest one, and that's from Missouri. And it doesn't give much details. It just says that there's this popular hotel in the Kansas City, Missouri area, which is now like a historic hotel. And one time a guest stayed there and complained multiple times of an extremely foul odor. After blowing him off throughout the week, housekeeping finally checked out the room and discovered the source of the odor was a dead body under the bed. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun.
So I don't know. Maybe it turned out to be like a haunted hotel because of that. It doesn't really say. I don't know why that's considered the scariest urban legend for Missouri, but that's what they gave us. This one is out of Nebraska. Go Cornhuskers. This one is a rather disturbing old tale that tells the story of two farmers who take a road trip to buy powerful fireworks that were not for sale in the Nebraska area. They bought the fireworks back to their farmhouse and got extremely drunk before the celebrations. Looking out from their porch upon the field, they spy some rabbits in the distance. Remembering what a nuisance the rabbits were to the crops, the farmers decide to get some sadistic pleasure with the fireworks and the rabbits.
Oh.
They strap each rabbit to a firework and watch them run off into the distance before they blow up, laughing hysterically. They tied one last bunny to a firework and watched it run. This rabbit, however, ran the opposite direction toward the farmer's beloved truck. Seconds before detonating, the bunny jumped through the driver's seat window and blew the truck out.
I hope that's real, because that'd be great.
Last one I'm going to do is from Oklahoma. This tale is from Carol Ann Smith, who was a woman that lived in the Tulsa area during the 1940s. Smith kept to herself except for the loud rituals she held in her home. Neighbors eventually called the cops, who found two women in cages in Smith's basement. They had been there for over 10 years. Smith was thrown in jail, but people say that her house foundations can still be seen in the area, and they attract a fair amount of negative paranormal activity.
Huh. Well, I too have a story about a bunny rabbit. If we go to Virginia, we may know the tale of the Bunny Man. In the early 1970s, reports began to surface of a person in a bunny costume running around Fairfax, Virginia, and threatening people with a large axe. At least 4 official police reports were made by different people that encountered this terrifying rabbit. According to legend, an insane asylum was successfully shut down after a public petition, and the inmates were being transferred to another facility. One of the vans transferring the patients crashed, however, and one of the inmates was never found. That inmate was named Douglas J. Griffin. He had been placed in the asylum for killing his entire family on Easter Sunday. The Halloween following the escape, a group of teenagers were allegedly killed inside the tunnel that's pictured above, with their corpses hung over the bridge, and locals began to avoid the tunnel every Halloween after that. So maybe that's something to do with the old bunny rabbit incident in Nebraska. This one sounds kind of weird. It took place in Wyoming. It's called the Wyoming Incident. And it says, in 2006, a video similar to the one that you can watch above began surfacing on the internet with this description. The Wyoming Incident, or Wyoming hijacking, is a lesser-known case of a broadcast on TV that was hijacked. A hacker managed to interrupt broadcasts from a local programming channel believed to have served several smaller communities in the county of Niobrara, and aired his video on the channel. The video contained numerous clips of disembodied human heads showing various emotions and poses. The camera position would change usually every 10 to 15 seconds, and the video was often interrupted by a special presentation announcement. This clip is taken from one of these intervals. The video is mostly locally well known because of the effect that it had on the local people. You've got Alaska, you've got the Bushman. Ancient legend states that the Alaskan Bushman, aka Bigfoot, has descended from species of creatures known as the Tornits. Apparently, a long time ago, the Inuit native people and the Tornits once harmoniously shared the upper reaches of Alaska. The peaceful arrangement ended when an Inuit killed a Tornit for destroying his kayak, resulting in most Tornits migrating elsewhere. The ones who stayed, however, were angry. What has followed is hundreds of years of stories of hunters going missing and only turning up dead with mutilated bodies. People are still seeing these creatures known as the Bushmen today.
Almost sounds like a little bit of missing 411 there, but they usually don't have marks on them though. That's true.
Yeah,
and then they attacked the Amish in 1980 and got killed with shotguns.
In California, there's something called the alien blood. No, that's not even a name. Alien blood poisons entire hospital. Over 24 emergency room staff in 1984 were KO'd after a woman named Gloria Ramirez had her blood drawn in the ER. The very second her blood began being sampled, a foul odor filled the entire area, and Ramirez's skin began taking on an oily sheen. Suddenly, multiple medical support staff had begun to pass out and or lose control of their limbs. The entire emergency room was evacuated, save for a skeleton crew of doctors still trying to save Ramirez's life. They failed and she died 40 minutes after being admitted. This news article from Discover magazine says, in all, 23 of the 37 ER room staff members experienced at least one symptom. 5 were hospitalized for the rest of the night. Balderas endured bouts of apnea during a 10-day hospitalization. Gorzinski, the most severely ill, spent 2 weeks in intensive care where in addition to apnea, she suffered from hepatitis, pancreatitis, and a vascular necrosis, a condition in which the bone tissue is starved of blood and begins to die. In her case, the avascular necrosis attacked her knees, restricting her to crutches for months. It takes a really damn potent toxin to do all that, says Sheldon Wagner, a clinical toxologist at Oregon State University. This created a media frenzy, with many outside theorists supposing that Ramirez wasn't human. There have been no ironclad official explanations given for what happened at the Riverside General Hospital in California in 1984.
It sounded like you just read a really bad pilot script for the X-Files.
Or a really good episode. In Mississippi, we have the secret disease covered up by the government. During the late 1950s, there were riotings going on in Mississippi because the affected residents didn't believe the government was doing enough to combat the Macritis disease. According to legend, the disease caused women to perceive a hormonal odor off of men, which compelled them to kill the unlucky man. The epidemic came to its height when an entire village of women chased one single man into a freezing river where they all drowned. Many people alleged that the government engaged in a massive cover-up because they didn't have a cure. That's just weird. Let me knock out Kansas real quick, and I'm sorry I'm not on the right page for that. In Kansas, I don't think I've ever heard of this. And Preston, have you heard of the...
How is it that I've heard of it and you haven't?
I've never heard of the Hamburger Man.
I heard of a crazy hermit that used to live up in the country, and if you went and bothered him, he'd kill you. But, I mean, that's pretty much every small town. But in Kansas, apparently, we have the Hamburger Man. Says this is one of the strangest and most disturbing urban legends on the website. So the story goes, there is a deformed man who is maimed in a car crash or a house fire. He lives in a shack somewhere on the Hamburger Hill in Hutchinson, Kansas. He's a cannibal who hunts people who dare to roam on his hill alone. He kidnaps them, grinds their bodies down while they're still alive into a meaty hamburger-like mixture for his dinner. That just sounds so freaking creepy. And
run as fast as you can. You don't want to get captured by the Hamburger Man.
Okay, so if nobody else has any more, I'll finish off on the infamous Troll Village of Rose Hill, Kansas. And Preston and I have talked about it a bit. Rob, have you heard about this?
I don't think I have.
Okay, so and Preston, you've heard of it, right?
Oh, yes, I'm the one that brought it up that we should try to convince the family to let us go there and investigate it.
Okay, so stay tuned, because this goes out to you. In Rose Hill, about 3 miles south and half a mile east of Rose Hill, Kansas, lays a little farm village. The 2-acre lot has around 6 abandoned buildings in the village, ranging from a house to a barn, and even a well that has a building with a basement built over it. They are very creepy and mysterious at night. The local high school kids call this the Troll Village because it almost seems to be a small town for small people in the middle of nowhere. If you go there at night, you'll hear strange noises accompanied by odd-smelling odors, so just like soap and...
Old people.
I guess Listerine. If you dare, go in the basement of the well building around midnight. Not many people have. From Rose Hill, go south on Butler Road about 2 or 3 miles to, I'm not going to say the address because the next part of the story, you can't miss it. Very awesome buildings, defiantly a weird smell in the air. The well is pretty neat along the basement, blah, blah, blah. If you bring your digital camera, take pictures, and you're sure to get a flash with people looking at you. Okay, so this is on a website called darkkansas.com, and I want you I love this, and Preston, you should probably pay attention. So people can comment on here, right? So back in 2007, a girl says, I have been here many times. This place is pretty creepy at night, worth checking out. Next person says, I can't believe I've lived in Douglas for years and I have never been to this place. Next person says, agreed. I also live in Douglas for many years and have never heard of this one. Guess it's time to make a trip out there. I'm a kid from Rose Hill and this is cool. Do you think I'll get good pictures and scare my friends? Okay, this is the best parts. As of now, things have... Okay, this is 2008, September 2008. As of now, things have grown up around here, and you actually have to look pretty hard to see it. My in-laws live just down the road from there. They have never heard anything or seen anything out there. It's just creepy because it's so dark. October 8th, 2008. Yeah, I went out there a few months ago in the dark, and it's just way too overgrown. With all the mosquitoes, heat, and humidity, and not being able to see much, it made a pretty unpleasant time.
Pansy.
October 25th, 2009. Hey, I actually own this land, and let me tell you, it's not haunted. Not even close. It's old, it's dark, it's rotting, and it looks like it's haunted. But it's not. And since I own the land in all capital letters, that means whoever comes here looking for so-called ghosts and trolls is trespassing, and therefore I'm liable to press charges. We recently caught a few derby idiots staying on our land, and it's not a joke. I asked Kristen Nottingham, Michael Cleveland, Matt Rogers, Ricky Mitchell, who were there, who we just caught. Ask these people who we just caught. They were caught by me and my mother and my brother, who did in fact have a gun with him. We are only posting this for your safety. My brother goes hunting, and we have let a few people hunt on this land too, so if you got shot by one of them, we're not liable for charges because we own this land, and you're the ones who are trespassing. If you aren't a fan of getting shot or having the cops involved and calling your parents to inform them that what you were doing and that you were dead, letting police get involved, the boys mentioned above, stay off our land. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there you go, Preston. Don't go on there. The reason why I wanted to talk about the Troll Village is something really cool that my wife and I discovered today here in Wichita. Preston, have you ever seen the troll? The troll that lives in the sewers here in Wichita?
Yeah.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I'd never saw it before.
Yeah, dude. It's been here for forever.
So, don't give away. Yeah, it's been here since 2007, which is it's 9 years, not forever, but we won't give away the location because it was kind of a cool scavenger hunt for Shayla and I to do today. But it says here, the description says, without a plaque or other indicator, the hidden troll sculpture of Wichita, Kansas, lays in wait, chained beneath an unassuming storm grate. This is from atlasobscura.com, which I just recently discovered. And basically it's known as the Wichita Troll, and I sent you guys kind of a blurry picture, but yeah, there's a really awesome troll statue underneath a storm grate downtown by the Riverwalk. And it's a pretty badass little statue. So, I won't say exactly where it's at, but if you want to go take a look, it is in the near vicinity of the Keeper of the Plains statue down on the river. And apparently, if you go out at night, the statue is lit up with a kind of an ominous green light that kind of illuminates.
Oh, that's what that picture was that you sent me, because I had no fucking clue.
I meant to send you guys other photos of it, because it's kind of like proceedings getting blurrier and clearer, and then you finally see the troll's face. But yeah, it's freaking awesome, man. There's a local artist named Connie Ernat, and as part of an effort to revitalize the Riverside area, she made this awesome toothy bronze statue of a troll, and with the city's permission has constructed that in a sewer drainage. So, pretty sweet. Well, guys, it's going to be kind of short and sweet and not really to the point tonight, but let's go ahead and get some plugs in real quick. Rob, we'll let you do that because you're the long-winded of all of us.
Listen to Pixelated Radio. God, so many pixelated things going on. Pixelated Radio, you can listen to us, me, Corey, Mark, and Rich all talking about video games. So listen to that. Also listen to Sports Car Unleashed if you like sports car racing with Rich. Rich Hall, he's our co-host on Pixelated Radio, so he's got his own podcast with some guys, and they talk about sports cars. Also listen to Mark and his podcast, Pixelated Sausage Cast. He has his own podcast where he rambles on about things and sings. He says not very often, but he has sung before, so there's that. He talks about video games and stuff on his own. And then the last thing I want to bring up is our D&D game will continue this Wednesday, and we're going to be playing some more Curse of Strahd. But yeah, that happens on Wednesday nights. We Twitch stream it, so you guys can all watch it. And if you miss it, you can get it on YouTube like immediately after, like a few hours after it's already up.
I just want to let everybody know I finished up Penny Dreadful. My wife and I finished up Penny Dreadful, and if you're into, gothic tales of, Frankenstein's monster and Dracula and whatnot, it was a pretty good show. 3 seasons, all available on Netflix, so if you're into that, check it out.
And we're going to have a special Halloween edition of this show out on Halloween. We don't know what it's going to be yet,
And don't forget, at the Old Town Warren, they have the October and Old Town Horror Festival. I think it's the 6th year for that. Every Monday and Tuesday night, classic horror movies at Old Town Warren. I think they're like $5 a pop, so definitely check that out. And with that being said, guys, thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time around.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. You have two ways. One, email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we have that set up too. Dial us at 707-523-4263. Again, that's 707-523-4263. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Is it Bigfoot's or is it Big Feet's?
I think it's Big Fi.
Giggle bits.